Good morning. It is Sunday morning, 9 o'clock, and here I am with my Sunday thought. I just need to say a couple of things before I actually start in on the topic. Is that on Wednesday, I had mentioned if you were watching the Wednesday show, I couldn't use my left arm, but my dear doctors increased some and changed some meds around, and the swelling's all gone. And although I've still got pain in the main part, where the painkillers are taking care of that. So I want you to know I actually can move my arms around today. And what else? My son has been staying with me the last few days, and that's always nice when he comes to visit because he can do all the heavy lifting that I have a little bit of trouble with. So it's been a good few days. And last night we went to see the movie Dune, which, by the way, I thoroughly enjoyed and recommended it. It was just majestic in some of the scenes. But anyway, on to today's topic. One of the things that I find a lot is that very often we can move into judgment rather than compassion. Where do we get the difference in those two is acceptance. Acceptance of what is for others' plight or even our own. And so that we move into a place of compassion rather than judgment. And today we have so many people that are homeless, so for various reasons, and we forget, we kind of dump them all into the homelessness, and most cities have them now, and it's a shame actually, and it's sad. But I think that in conversation with other people, that we're not talking about compassionately as to how they have to live and how they have to survive. We go into judgment that they're even there. And basically, by the grace of God, it's not us. And because it can be quite easily with things changing and moving all the time. So I think the three main words that we need to sort of look at and come to understand is the difference between judgment and compassion, and know that the difference is acceptance in the middle. We have acceptance. And because we cannot change often a lot of things that are happening and going around, we can speak out, we can do other things, but even that's not always permitted these days. So how do we come into acceptance? First of all, recognizing whatever the reality is, how the reality works, how it comes, and begin to have a sense of compassion for a person's plight. Most people live their lives, have something that goes on at some point of time where they have to deal with all sorts of things they would prefer not to deal with. Death of a family member, sickness, an illness that may come on, something that happens. Do we judge that? And I know very often people have an element of, well, if you have this, then there's this wrong with you, or that's wrong with you. But what I found is that we're humans and we are not always perfect, and things happen, often not by our own design. Excuse me here a sec. Not by our own design. It's not like we sit down and say, oh, we're going to have this happen now. It's like it comes out of usually unexpectedly. But when a person is on the outside looking in, it can be very easy to move into judgment rather than compassion. And judgment is harsh. It's very, very harsh. And when you think about what your perceptions are, is actually your vibration rate, how you vibrate yourself. And it's often unseen, some of the judgments we have. I know I've had to really look at some of the judgments I've had on certain circumstances through my life. And I began to learn just to accept that's where they're at. And very often I know, because I do readings for people and I get an insight into their lives, very often they don't want to be in that acceptance stage of their own lives. They just want to be a lot of their own judgments of what it is, and fear of other people's judgments. I've had many situations in my life. I have to tell you a little story that many, many years ago, my teacher said to me I would be a really good reader because of my life's experiences. I was 22, two little kids. Husband was in university at the time. I was doing a job And I'm thinking, what experiences? Well, I've had a very, very interesting life, and I've had many different experiences because to understand another person, he was correct. You had to go through, and I've had the most bizarre things happen. And it's like you learn as time goes by not to go into judgment, but to accept and then say, okay, what do we do with the situation? So that when I have a client with me, what I can do is have compassion for where they're at and aid them to see ways they can maybe move on or change their thinking a lot. Because I do a lot with how we think, how we feel, and all of those two putting together. But when I think about that statement, yeah, you'll be a good reader because of your life's experiences. I thought, what experiences? A mother with two kids, happy where my life is. And yes, well, sometimes it's like the thunderclap comes along and then you go, oh, what do I do now? And that's the key. When a person says to you their experiences, rather than go into judgment that they had that experience, because you know nothing about what's the background, where their belief system is. And when you work with the belief systems, as I do so much, is that you really see that often those belief systems come from other lives and other time periods, maybe even other planets that you've brought in with you, and it acts out into the life now. So we can't really have all that judgment, but mostly it's for ourselves to accept what is so that we can make decisions as to where we want to be rather than just be in reaction all the time. Living a life is wonderful. To me, there's just so much. And when I look back over my life, I've done a lot of very interesting things. Some great, some not so great, some actually horrible. But it adds to the dimension of who you are. It adds to your understanding of we don't go into judgment because we don't know the backstory. Most people don't know the backstory of anything. So when we have a judgment, we're not in compassion. And if we're not in compassion, we're not really learning how to put all these things together. And so here we are in the beginning of March. I don't know what weather is like in your place, but we've been having little bits of snow here and cold coming in, coming out. It's that transition time. But anyway, I trust that you just spend a moment thinking about your life and where you run into judgment and where you run into compassion. And are you accepting things as they are, whether it's your life, whether it's somebody else's life? And know that the underlying element is always to love, to accept. And acceptance, to me, love and acceptance are very close. That universal love force comes because you accept people. Their journey is their journey. And how do you support them? How do you love them to support themselves? Because we move into self-judgment so easily we judge ourselves. I know sometimes I talk a lot about self-forgiveness because we judge ourselves. And the only way when you feel guilty or regretful, I found, is self-forgiveness will move you beyond that. So that's my Sunday thought today. And I will be back on Monday night with mental mind treatments for those that do have an issue they'd like a perspective on them. And of course, again, Wednesday with Norma Talks. You have a great day and enjoy it, whatever. And just remember, am I in judgment? Am I compassionate? And am I accepting the scenario, whether it's yours or somebody else's? You have a great day. Bye now.